NetsBoy, so let's hear what he has to say. His name is NetsBoy, he thinks the world is all over when the Nets just can't play. What up, Net fans? NetsBoy here, bringing you the latest in your Brooklyn Nets news. All right, so we're heading into NBA free agency. It's just about a day away, 2 days away. And I'm hearing a lot of things about what the Nets are going to do. A lot of things. And to be honest, I have no clue. No clue at all. So I'm just going to really talk about more or less what I think they should do as compared to what they will do. I'm going to be straight up honest. I don't know what Sean Marks has in store. I mean, we know he traded Thaddeus Young to get Karis LeVert, and they got Isaiah Whitehead, and but he has said that he's going to go after veterans. Apparently that's the latest thing, is he wants to go after veteran players that could maybe make the team good. That's kind of confusing, because if you're going to keep veterans that are going to make the team good, why wouldn't you have kept Thaddeus Young and maybe found another piece that you could have traded if you wanted to get LeVert? But like I said, I'm not going to question that he has some sort of plan, because I'm sure he does. That being said, there's a couple routes the way the Nets can go via free agency. There is the become good but not great route, and then there's the basically full rebuild route. Right now, it looks like they're kind of trying to go in between. The Nets have been tied to players like Jamal Crawford and Rajon Rondo. Personally, the Rondo thing I think is not going to happen. I mean, Sean Marks keeps talking about high character guys, and I'm pretty sure Rondo does not really have high character. I mean, come on, he doesn't have a good reputation of having much of a character guy. So I don't think that's really going to happen. And I'm going to be honest, there's a lot of reports saying Rondo wants to go to the Nets, Rondo in the Nets. Nothing have I read that said the Nets were interested in Rondo. I just want to point that out. Everything says Rondo's interested in the Nets. That's not necessary. I haven't read anything about that. So I don't think Rondo is going to happen, but who knows? But like I said, Jamal Crawford, Al Horford, Brandon Jennings, Jeremy Lin, Ryan Anderson, Eric Gordon. These are all types of guys the Nets have been tied to. Harrison Barnes, kind of basically everyone. And I think some of those names kind of intrigue me, like an Al Horford. You get Al Horford. Do you plan on trading Brook Lopez, or are you going to play Al Horford at the power forward spot, which we've seen that he could do that. And then the Nets will have this interesting little Twin Towers type thing going on with Lopez and Horford. That would be interesting. Maybe they get Ryan Anderson, like I said, which really fits well with Brook Lopez because they kind of play well off each other, not to mention they're really good friends. Maybe they're going to get Eric Gordon, who's a guy who, is coming off an injury-plagued season, but has the potential to be a legitimate scorer in this league. Maybe they get Brandon Jennings, a guy who's also coming off an injury who has a lot to prove. Apparently they might get Jamal Crawford. I mean, that one down doesn't make too much sense to me, because if you're going to get veterans, I'd get younger veterans like a Ryan Anderson, like a Brandon Jennings, and so on and so forth, like a Harrison Barnes. Harrison Barnes isn't even a veteran, but players who are like 28, kind of like the Brook Lopez range. Those guys to me fit really well. Obviously they're going to try to swing for the fences and go after Mike Conley. I know that's going to happen, but I don't think there's really a good shot the Nets are actually going to get Conley. Kevin Durant is a joke. That I don't think was ever legitimately a possibility. But players like Jeremy Lin, Brandon Jennings, Ryan Anderson, Eric Gordon, those guys to me all have a legitimate chance of going to the Nets. So once again, though, the question is, what are they looking to do? Are they looking to get some players to fill out a roster? Are they looking to get some young guys with potential? Like a Harrison Barnes is someone that a lot of people talked about. Harrison Barnes is 24 years old. He's an unrestricted free agent, but we all know the Warriors are going to go after Kevin Durant. And if that's going after Kevin Durant, maybe the Nets or any other team can lure Barnes away by giving him close to, if not, a max contract. I don't think Barnes is worth a max contract, but he's certainly worth at least trying to overpay a bit to get, because at 24 years old, he was like the third or fourth scoring option on the Warriors. So who knows how good he actually could be if given an opportunity. And like I said, at 24 years old, he fits that mold of a young team. Maybe that's the move the Nets go, and they bring Harrison Barnes in, and they say, okay, this is your shot, Barnes. Another guy the Nets were looking into is Chandler Parsons. His name popped up. He's a good, kind of a younger guy. I think he's, 27 as well. He could fill that void. So there's a lot of guys they're being tied to. To me, Harrison Barnes would be a great pickup, and Brandon Jennings would be a great pickup. Brandon Jennings, I think, is probably the most legitimate guy I think the Nets have a shot at getting. Brandon Jennings is a guy coming off of the Achilles injury, had a mediocre, comeback when he got traded to the Magic, and he's just really looking for an opportunity to reestablish himself as a solid point guard in the league, which he is. I never consider Brandon Jennings an elite point guard, but he's a solid point guard, a solid scorer, and a capable, 20-8 or 18-8 type of 18-6 or 7 type player that the Nets could use. So and he's 26 years old, so he fits that younger time frame. So if I'm the Nets, Brandon Jennings is definitely someone I'm looking at. Harrison Barnes, like I said, because of his youth and his potential and how good he actually could be, he's someone else I think the Nets should definitely look at. Ryan Anderson. I like Ryan Anderson. I always liked him. I still felt that the trade that when he was traded with Vince Carter to the Magic is still one of the worst trades ever. Not just because of trading Vince Carter, but why you threw Ryan Anderson in, just to me, baffled me completely. That made no sense. The Nets gave up on him way too early. I would love for him to come back. He's friends with Brook Lopez, always been close with him. I think his game complements well with Lopez, though that would be a very defensively inefficient team. I mean, Lopez is a solid defender, but he's not a great defender, and Ryan Anderson is kind of so not a good defender. So that would be interesting to see, but I think he's someone they should go after. Sean Livingston, he's a guy I think the Nets could go after. Same reason why Harrison Barnes might be available. Livingston might be available because of the fact that the Warriors want Kevin Durant, so they're going to keep all their money. Though I think a lot of teams are going to go after Livingston. Eric Gordon. I like Eric Gordon too. I think he is also 27 years old. I think he has a lot to prove. So basically, if I'm I almost said Billy King. Old habit. If I'm Sean Marks, I'm going after Brandon Jennings, Eric Gordon, Harrison Barnes, and Ryan Anderson. And that is actually the guys I want them to get. And I think they could possibly get all four of those guys. You need to remember, the Nets have over $50 million in cap space now after the Thaddeus Young trade, and could have more depending on what happens with Wayne Ellington and Markel Brown and their situations. Or same thing with Jarrett Jack if they decide not to bring back Jarrett Jack. Maybe, maybe not. I really am on the fence with that. I like the idea of having Jack as a veteran leader, but I also like the idea of having his $6 million off the books to go after even more free agents. So they could probably get at least 3 of those 4 guys, if not all 4, depending on how much they're looking at with Harrison Barnes contract-wise and Ryan Anderson. Both Barnes and Harrison and Anderson are looking at pretty big contracts, like borderline max deal contracts, if not max deal contract, based off of who they are. And both their guys, I think, are at the $21 million range. So if you bring them, but guess what? You can bring both those guys in. That's $42 million. The Nets will still have about $10 million in cap space. So they could still go get a Brandon Jennings for relatively cheap. Because I think you can get Jennings pretty cheap. Jennings and Gordon, I think the Nets could go and get relatively cheap and decent contracts with 1-year deals with maybe a player option, because both those guys are still out to prove their value. They've been hurt these last few seasons, and they want to prove that they are still legitimate players, so they'll take any decent contract. Maybe you give them Brandon Jennings an $8 million contract with a 1-year option. And I know you're saying that's a lot of money, but you have to remember, with the cap jumping up to $94 million, an $8 million contract is like getting like a $4 million contract. That's the way I look at it. Whatever the contract is, split it in half, and that's what the value would have been. So signing Brandon Jennings to $8 million is like if you had signed him to a $4 million contract last year, which people would probably say, oh yeah, that makes more sense. So maybe you go that route. If you don't get Barnes or Ryan Anderson for max deals, maybe you get them a little bit less, like $18 million. Maybe you do the same thing with Eric Gordon, and you offer him also an $8 million contract with an option, just so he could figure it out and get going and try to have an opportunity to reestablish himself. Now, all those players are very injury prone, but I still think that because they're young guys and they kind of fit the mold, that hey, maybe this could be a rebuilding thing because, like I said, they're all in their 20s. Yes, they're in their late 20s, but they're all in their 20s, so they still have, if healthy, their better years of basketball ahead of them. I think it's worth it. So that's what I would do if I'm Sean Marks. I'm going after Brandon Jennings, Eric Gordon, Ryan Anderson, Harrison Barnes. You can't get Harrison Barnes. I think Chandler Parsons is a good other guy to go after. I think Al Horford, if you can't get Ryan Anderson, is a good guy you can go after. They might actually do it the other way around. They might go after Horford first and then Anderson. I think, all in all, those are really good players to go after. Jeremy Lin's another guy that they've gone after. I think if you can't get Jennings, you go after Lin. I think if you can't get Eric Gordon, you kind of don't worry about another shooting guard because the Nets are pretty stacked in the wing position and shooting guard position. But most importantly, I think Brandon Jennings is one of the biggest pieces that they should actually try to get. I think of all those free agents, I think he's the most important because he's also, to me, the most realistic guy that the Nets can get. Being that he's 26 years old, coming off injury, has a lot to prove. You can get him at a very reasonable contract. And I think that he, when healthy, he's a legitimate player. And, I think that he's someone the Nets should definitely look into. And they should look into all those guys. But he's somebody I think has the biggest chance of actually going to the Nets. I think Chandler Parsons, if the Nets go that route, has a good chance of going to the Nets as well. He's going to probably try to want to make some money, though he might be a little costly. But I think the Nets could get him as well. The rest of the free agency, the second-tier players, I don't really know. Festus Ezeli is someone available. Richard Jefferson, players like that, those second-tier players that really will become role players. And I don't know if I'm really too worried about that since the Nets do have a lot of young players that I think the young players need opportunities to play. So I almost think Sean Marks is going to try to make his starting lineup of young vets like Brook Lopez, like Jennings, like Chandler Parsons, young veterans, so young guys who are considered veterans by being in the league a couple of years, and then let their second unit be the real young guys, the rookies, the Rondé Hollis Jeffersons, the Chris McCulloughs, the Isaiah Whiteheads, the Karis LeVerts, the Bojan Bogdanoviches, even though Bogdanovich isn't that young himself. I think that's the route he's going, but I honestly have no idea. And I'm actually very interested to see what the Nets will do via free agency. I'm very excited. I really don't have any idea of what he could do, and we'll see moving forward. So that's my Nets free agency spiel. Those are the guys I would look at if I'm the Nets. Maybe they're going to look at a few other people. We'll see. So go ahead and comment and let me know what you guys think of what free agents you think the Nets should get or what you would do if you're Sean Marks. And we'll see what happens. My next NetsBoy episode probably won't be for a while. It depends on if there's other big major news, like major free agent signings that maybe the Nets do or so on and so forth. But it'll probably be after the free agency, so maybe towards the end of July. So we'll see. But, if something more important happens or big happens prior to that, I'll probably post another video. So just keep your eyes open for the latest NetsBoy. And until then, this is NetsBoy, signing off.